International Media TV. Television that listens to you.
Hi, I'm Johnny Burrell. Welcome to the program.
I am somebody. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody. I may be on welfare, but I am somebody. I may be unskilled, but I am somebody. I am black, beautiful, proud. I must be respected. I must be protected. What time is it? When we stand together, what time is it? When we say no more yes about, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it?
We had this session last year, and well, some years ago, and several things stood out about Intel. One was that we were challenging companies to release the EEO-1 data, and they were arguing that they would not do it because it infringed upon them and affected their ability to keep their secrets and put them in a competitive disadvantage. Well, Intel had already been doing that. It had not been given the notoriety for doing it. So Intel was somewhat ahead of the game on releasing EEO-1 data. And when finally, after some measured protests, Google did it, others began to do it. And one reason they didn't want to do it because the numbers were embarrassing and very systematic. And when we talked with Mr. Krzanich, he determined to accept the role of some leadership in the Valley to help set the pace of some measures of progress that you see now is in no small measure because of Brian Krzanich just assuming a position of leadership. Give him a hand, will you please? A hand. You burst a bubble when you said you were going to commit $300 million with a focus on making your country look like America, that you were going to focus on pipeline to HBCUs to find technical work, and some money for startups. Where are we?
Well, I think we made some, boy, that came on all of a sudden. I think we made some really good progress, and we've identified some places we still have some work to do. So, we made a commitment that we'd hire 40% women in URM last year. Underrepresented minorities, we ended up hiring 43%, so we actually beat that number set. We said we'd get our we'd get our retention for women in URMs down to what the company average was. It was quite a bit higher. We got it down to the company average. So we made a lot of progress. We've made commitments with Georgia Tech and Oakland Unified School District, and so we've started spending our money. The Hispanic Tech Council in Silicon Valley, but we've also learned a lot of things that actually where we're going to have to go. Some of the actions we're going to do have to be even quite a bit bigger.
What were your retention rates?
Our retention rates dropped. We run about 6.5% if you use both what we call undesired and desired, so basically people you want to have leave and people you don't want to have leave, right? So choosing and then you choosing. And so we got the women in URM down to that kind of a level.
What do those numbers look like on the African American side? The companies seem to have some challenge when it comes to them with African American employee. What does yours look like now?
For just African American?
Yeah.
I don't have it just pulled out from that. It's probably just a little bit, it's right around that 6.5% as well. It might be just a hair higher. But we've really worked hard on getting the African American retention rates up or the exit rates down. And it's really on a one-on-one basis.
You know, when we began this process, all employers were around 2%. And it seemed to have been almost a universal number. What are your numbers now in terms of the employee?
I'm sorry, the African American or the
minorities, period.
Underrepresented minorities. So I'm actually, this is a good one. We had a roughly 30% increase in our underrepresented minority population last year. We're up to about 12% now. And that's across the company. If you take a look at our leadership for underrepresented minorities, and if you include women as well, we're in the roughly 20% of the top tier of the company if you combine those two.
The company seemed to stumble at the level of board members and C-suite participation. Where are you with that now?
Board members, we have 2 women and currently no underrepresented minorities on our board. We've had several board discussions about the need to add additional women and to add underrepresented minorities. With boards, you have 10 slots other than me. And so you really have to have a process that has some people retire off or choose to go off, and then make sure that you have a pipeline of people that are ready to go. So we've started talking to several underrepresented minority candidates and women candidates to really help them make sure they're ready when we have a slot come free. And so when we do have a slot come free, we will have, I believe, either a woman or an underrepresented minority.
Is it a priority? You know, we're convinced that it's not a talent deficit, but rather opportunity deficit. Each instance where the board's seats have opened up, there were people who were shovel ready, so to speak. Even in the tech area.
I think, you have to take a look at, when you fill out a board, you're not just filling out a board with people, who are just tech, even a tech company. So I want people who are financially astute because I have an audit committee. I want people who are good at legal because I need people to help me with, reviewing legal issues in all the world. And you're absolutely right. If you take a look at that population, there's no reason why you can't find women and underrepresented minorities, especially in there. When you get into tech, I think it depends a little bit. If you get really specific, it can be hard to find anybody at all, right? If you're looking for people who really understand, micro electronics at a certain level.
Give us the responsibility to find them, and you vet them. We'll find them.
Yep. Okay, I accept that.
What about C-suites?
No, I actually think that, for example, at the CFO level, there are plenty of women and underrepresented minority candidates as we look to go fill out CFOs. If you take a look at my leadership team and who I've got on my pipeline for my replacement, right? So eventually I'll go. I have at least 2 women, 1 African American, and probably 2, let's call it white males, right? So it's a pretty good mix. If you look at my pipeline of the 5 or so people that I'm trying to develop, it's a good mix of African American women and, people who aren't.
As you've reached out and sought to expand and include, what kind of resistance have you faced within?
Yeah, I think if you take a look at our company, there's been a bit of a backlash within the company. People worry that, as a white male, you're kind of under siege to an extent. And there's been a bit of resistance. We've even had a few threats and things like that on some of the leadership team around, our position on diversity and inclusion. We stand up there, though, and just remind everybody it's not an exclusive process. We're not bringing in women or African Americans or Hispanics in exclusion to other people. We're actually trying to just bring them in and be a part of the whole environment and community. And so we spend a lot of time on that. We have programs now We have a program called Grow to really help the overall population. We have another program called Lead for the leadership team to really help them understand what an inclusive environment means, and that means that nobody is excluded, including the white.
Is there some way to train them to increase their civilization comfort zone? Because they accept desegregated access to capital in the market, but not to participation in leadership. Is there some way to give them a comfort zone?
Are you saying to get them comfortable with that?
I mean, those who resist inclusion. Is there some process of creating for them a comfort zone so they'll be reactionary?
Yeah, so for example, when we went out and said, let's take a look at in order to have African Americans and women and Hispanics at full representation, take a look at the numbers. The numbers, it doesn't take that many people. You go hire 2,000 or 3,000 people and fill out in a company of 100,000, and you make a significant increase in the population and shift the numbers. So it's not that there aren't plenty of opportunities for the rest of the people. So it's actually educating them on, this doesn't require for all the opportunities that are for all the other people to go away. It's actually that we're just going to give a representative number of them to the rest of the population. And by the way, we believe that if our company looks more like the way the world looks, we'll actually grow better. There's a lot of data that says, the more diverse your teams, the more women you have in leadership and African Americans, the better the products are, the better your results will be. And so there'll be other opportunities as well. So we're educating them on that.
We make the case, we didn't know how good baseball could be until everybody could play.
Good example.
And the same was true with access to technology and Intel, for that matter. When the opportunities open up and there's money in market, talent, location, there's growth, and there's growth, everybody wins.
I agree. And I mean, there's a lot of, published data that shows that diverse teams, however that diversity looks like, whether it's race or gender or just ways of thinking, that the products they do, the things they create and build are always better than kind of a monolithic or singular looking team.
Last year you were around $100 million or thereabout in supplier relations, and you said you were trying to get to the $1 billion round table at some point in time. What kind of progress have you made toward more purchases from minority suppliers?
Sure. So this is a space, again, where I think we've made really, really good progress. We did about $150 million. If you go back to 2014 when we started this, $150 million a year on with diverse, women-owned, minority-owned businesses. We said by 2020 we'd get to $1 billion. So quite a gap. We went from 150 to 300 million last year. We have a goal to get at least to 400 million. I actually think we can get above that goal this year. So I expect this year to be almost halfway to that $1 billion
What did you do different to get there? Some other companies are having problems with that. What did you do different to get there than you had been doing?
This is one of those likes. I use this term a lot around my business, my company. I don't think we actually had to do anything. It's not like there weren't women-owned and minority-owned good suppliers out there to provide materials and services and all to us. What we had to do was get people to go out and say, hey, I'm going to go do this. It's something I'm going to do. I'm going to go look for companies that have that viewpoint and perspective. Otherwise, what happens is people, when they naturally do selections, they like people who are like them. And so they just naturally didn't fall to that, right? When you have people who aren't diverse making those choices, it's not that it's an unconscious bias.
So it was not the ideological, it was a cultural.
I actually think it's a subconscious thing. It's not something that occurs at the conscious level. You go, you have 3 suppliers, one of them's woman-owned, the other two are male-owned, and for just unconscious reasons, you say, well, that male one did a much better presentation. They seem like a much better organization. What you do is you stop that and you say, wait a second, let's use the data, let's look at the numbers. By the way, we want to make sure that a certain number of these go to women or minorities. And suddenly the women start looking better. Or you put diverse people in the selection process. You put a woman or a minority on the team making the selection, and suddenly everyone, you hear all the good points of the woman or minority presentation because there's somebody with a different eye and a different ear.
Is that somebody whose job is incentivized to research, recruit, and retain? Is that a job or that a happenstance?
Oh, no. So at our company, there's really kind of three ways we look at that. We have a talent manager, somebody who goes out and really helps us find the key talent, and that it's a woman, Pat McDonald. There's people I'll call just the staffing people that when you go down into the rank and file, tend to hire those people. And then Danielle, who's here someplace, there she is over there, is our diversity manager. So between the three of those, we really try and manage across that spectrum to make sure all of the results add up.
I'm moving as quick as I can, Group, but another area, because I'm trying to cover, he has to leave shortly, about the pipeline to HBCUs, historically black colleges.
Yeah.
That was a big issue. We can't find black engineers, we can't find people in computer science, but black colleges producing them.
You know, that's bunk. That's just not true. That you can't find good minority or women candidates. You have to go, this is just like anything else. If you send a bunch of non-diverse people out to non-diverse colleges, you suddenly come back and say, there's no pipeline. If you go out and send a diverse team out to diverse colleges, the historically black colleges that have great curriculums already, you suddenly come back with a great pipeline. We beat our target last year of 40% at 43%. We'll beat our target, I believe, this year as well. You can't tell me there's a pipeline issue if you're hiring 40% of your employees in a high-tech company like Intel, and they're women and minorities. There's not a pipeline issue.
The $300 million, just two more questions. The $300 million that you put forth, about how is it, we talked about it being distributed toward making the company look like America by 2020, startups, and HBCU pipeline. So how is it being distributed so far?
It's good. We've made several investments into minority and women-owned startups, and we have Lisa Lambert, who actually runs that as a woman minority leader, and she has we set up a separate council to kind of review the investments that is all minority-led, so that it really had a different eye, and so people would look at the investments with a different view. We've made great partnerships with Code 2040, which is really changing the way people in tech look and see the world in the target years ahead. Oakland Unified School, Hispanic community in Silicon Valley. We made a huge number of investments across the board, all focused at either increasing the pipeline, bringing people through the system. Oakland Unified School System, I think one of the schools we've been working with, they've already doubled the number of kids in the STEM education program. So I think we're making real change.
That's one of the good news programs. They, as opposed to just focusing on bringing in H-1B workers from abroad, there's a renewed focus on the promise of Oakland. I think Intel deserves a big hand for that. It's a big breakthrough program. There's nothing that those kids do when they bring them from abroad that kids in Oakland and San Francisco and San Mateo and LA cannot do, but there's not been emphasis. Some companies have had to put people with incentives attached to their pay for recruiting and retaining. Do you have any such incentive program?
Yes, and we absolutely have incentive programs for recruiting and hiring, especially in key technical positions. And at times we'll run programs where If you're able to bring a candidate that's a underrepresented minority or woman, you get an additional bonus as well in those positions. And it varies by the type of position we're looking for and how critical is that skill set. But we are in times offering additional incentives if it's a diverse employee.
What about asset managers, 401k? Where are we on the financial services dimension of Intel now?
Sure. We actually made some really good progress last year. We invested about $68 million. This is our overall investment effort around our employee cash investments, basically 401k and retirement and all of that. And that was out of about a little under 300 million. So it ended up being, I think, around 22% of the investment was towards minority-owned operations.
Now, one of the features of the companies here is how much they're growing, how much wealth they're creating, how they treat this wealth, poverty gap, worker gap. So we focus also, as you know, on cafeteria workers and truck drivers. Where you would say there's a lot of anxiety among cafeteria workers who want to get organized. Where are you guys on that?
Sure. So we are absolutely a company that believes that if workers want to organize, that's clearly their decision. So we do not get in their way. This is not an issue for us as a company in using that supplier.
Well, what about if your suppliers with whom you deal with, what about their workers because they're extensions of you?
No, and that's what I'm saying is if the supplier workers want to organize, that's simply between the supplier and those workers. Let's take the discussion a little bit further though, so that we really kind of state it. We try and strike a balance because these are contractors; they're not our workers, and if we get too engaged in what the employee argument is or anything like that, then suddenly we start to look like the employer rather than the contracting company. So we have to keep a certain distance. That said, one of the things we're thinking about doing, just like all the rest of the programs we've put together, is ask our contractors to start publishing their pay data so that we can see, are they paying people, what is the average pay, how is it distributed, and at least have that and have that start to become a part of our decision making of is that a supplier that we want to continue to do business with.
If I were looking at this issue of the cafeteria workers or the bus drivers from Chicago looking this way, I would just see Intel. Do you allow suppliers to get their contract that don't honor your value system? Because at the end of you take the hit, not the contractor.
Absolutely, not as far as the basic ethics of the company. So if we find that they're operating in any kind of a non-ethical way, absolutely not. We'll fire them literally that day. And that's why we want them to actually start publishing their pay data. It's a way to start to understand how are they treating their employees without us becoming the employer. And that's I have to keep that distance legally.
Let me say this in closing. We have had an interesting dynamic relationship in the Valley. Mr. Krzanich assumed some responsibility to try to make the Valley look like America, both here and the pipeline to HBCUs. And given we're having this annual, are you guys now publishing an annual report on where you guys are?
So this is good because this is one of the points I wanted to get out to this morning. We're actually publishing the data twice a year now because we're trying to make sure that we're really staying on top of the data. We think that the data should be moving, and we're trying to add more information to it. So we were publishing it once in the January timeframe, and then again in the August timeframe. So we published our January report. In our January report, we showed the progress we'd made on hiring women and underrepresented minorities and in progressing and promoting. And we also showed our pay equality across gender. So we showed we were at 100% pay equality for gender. And that's not just an average, it's at every layer. So partly it's because of our relationship with you, Reverend Jackson, and just the community that you've introduced us to. We started actually thinking differently.
Say it one more time.
But we, in our August report, we're actually going to do something that I think will really shock the industry a bit. we're going to publish our pay equality data not only by gender but by race. And so we're going to show African American pay, Hispanic pay, and Native American pay at each of the levels in the company. Now, literally, the world's going to see this data at the same time pretty much. Maybe I'll get it a couple days or a week earlier, but we're going with the data and we're going public. It's a risk take. We could have gaps. In some ways, I almost hope there are gaps, not because I hope people are underpaid, but because that's a problem I can go fix. As an engineer, I love fixing things. So I would love to have a problem where I find that that's part of my retention issue with African Americans, is there's a gap I didn't know about, and I can go fix it. I'd love that.
There was a lady who worked with the common people, referred to as Angel. We don't see her much anymore. Where is Roz, her nickname? Where's Roz now?
Oh, Roz is absolutely still a part of the company. Where
is Roz?
She's over there. She's off working on our foundation. So I think one of her dream jobs was always, she'd done diversity for so long, and Danielle wanted to go do that next, and Roz always had the desire that she wanted to go do, Intel puts about $300 million a year into the foundation, which is really around worldwide education, worldwide change the equation for people in underrepresented situations. And so she's running that program plus some of our other gifting programs. And so
tell her to remind her that we're in the world.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to remind everybody that in our August report, I believe we'll be one of the first, if not the first company that publishes the minority pay gap data, which will be just, I think, again, really pushing the agenda and pushing change into the world. And
put your hands together. Let me say, as we let him go off to his meeting today, that we have found that just the revealing of data has driven the needle, because these companies, in fact, have a need to represent good images, among other things, but also represent profit and growth. And the underserved markets with underutilized talent and untapped capital really represent what they go abroad for: job, money, market, talent, location, growth. I say it over and over again because at the end of the day, it is irrational. It certainly is unprofitable to not see a market so close and so profitable. The 100 largest cities in America are black and brown. We are America's future, so to not see us is to miss growth. I want to express thanks to you. You took the lead on the $300 million investment fund. You've taken the lead now on a process, hopefully, of getting an African-American Latino on the board very soon. Now you've taken the lead on publishing twice a year this significant data. We hope that this, for those of you who hear from other companies, we want you to do the same thing, to give us annual or biannual reports on your progress so we can use metrics and measure. Again, a big hand for Brian Krzanich. Put your hands together. Put your hands together. Roz, come up here, please, right quick. Roz and Danielle. Roz and Danielle, come quickly, please.
So the people who really do all the work.
Miss Roz used to be with the peon, now she's flying around the world. She's a global officer now.
So these are the people who really do all the work. I just get to sit up here and speak with the Reverend and talk about it.
And look at Roz's shoes and Brian's socks.
Now, who's better? Now, wait. What I have to tell you is Roz's husband gave me these socks. So I guess Roz gets all the credit here.
Thank you guys very much. Butch.